Esther, take it away.
Hi everyone, my name is Onyango Esther. I'm also a pharmacist, graduated in 2019, and I'm really happy to be here. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you, Nyawira, for the introduction, and looking forward to a productive meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Kelvin, I don't know if you are now in a position to speak to us. And thank you, Esther, for the video, refreshing face. Kelvin, are you in a position to introduce yourself? I don't think he is. All right, so Kelvin had mentioned he may not be able to introduce himself. So on behalf of Kelvin, was meant to introduce the Young Pharmacist Group. He had written down a speech, which I shall read on his behalf. I hope we follow together. Thank you so much. Hiya. So in case I speak as though as Kelvin, Dr. Kelvin, this is because I am reading as him. Right, to the President of the Noble Psk, Dr. Somoni Machogu, to the CEO, Dr. Daniela Munene, respected fellow and members of Psk NEC present, senior members of the society present, young pharmacist colleagues, friends, and acquaintances present, good evening. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all once again to the launch of the YPG. Indeed, this has been a long time coming, thanks to the efforts of the many who will probably not get credit that they deserve in this forum because of the time constraints. The journey to lend a voice to the young pharmacist and the future Psk leadership is now, exclamation mark. My name is Rotarian Dr. Kelvin Odongo, a proud member of this noble profession, and I am currently a director and chief pharmacist of Sagittarius Limited and head of Medication concierge services at medication concierge services at Checkups Medical Center, which is the chain of rapid comprehensive services in Kenya and South Sudan. I would ask our mics, thank you.
So I've muted everyone so that in faith you can unmute and speak so that we avoid the background disruption.
All right.
So Faith, unmute you.
Thank you so much, David, for that. Yes, so my name is Rotarian Dr. Kelvin Odongo. I am a proud member of the noble profession, currently a director and chief pharmacist of Sagittarius Limited and head of medication concierge services at Checkups Medical Center, which is a chain of rapid comprehensive outpatient services in Kenya and South Sudan. Additionally, I am an entrepreneur, having co-founded Medware Supplies Limited, as well as patient-centered care 360, which brings together medical professions from all cadres in a bid to keep up with the changing phases of medical practice. Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce myself in this manner, not only to highlight how unlimited a pharmacist can be, but to also showcase the various possibilities for meaningful partnerships in business and gainful employment. I am sure some of you already have had business partnerships and even opportunities for employment at Checkups, long-term and contractual. You can say, put up a hand if you have, yes. That's not in the speech. Back to the speech. I currently also serve as on a volunteer basis as the secretary of this noble group, YPG, a task that gives me great pride and joy. Today, my work is simple: to highlight the background and genesis of YPG, then hand over to the chair to further explain our agenda. As many of you may be aware, the young pharmacists are practicing or attempting to establish themselves in an environment that is uncertain like never before. I will not bore us with the details of why this is so. As such, it is only reasonable that as YPs, as young pharmacists, we would make attempts to regain our voice and claim our future. There have been so many attempts to lend voice to the YPs and have had memoranda drafted by some of you here, proposals submitted even to the level of parliamentary committees for health. All these efforts, I dare say, go to show how invested we all are in this profession. You must, however, bear me witness that our efforts have not been unified. At one point, our parent society, the Psk, was struggling to understand what it is the YPG agenda was, simply because we had different groups, each claiming credibility and with very different terms of reference. Nonetheless, they gave us audience, and thanks to Dr. Machogu and Dr. Daniela, we convened the very first forum for young pharmacists at the All Saints Cathedral in 2019 November. Thank you all for making it to the meeting, and a special mention to Mbao Gitao, Ululations, and some of the members you will hear from today for making that happen. More Ululations. Ladies and gentlemen, it is from that meeting at All Saints that for once we managed to get in a place of in a semblance of structure and offer leadership to the YPG. Volunteers were fronted and there began a journey of 1,000 miles. Early 2020, COVID-19 happened and we got a little distracted. However, there is a team that has kept the hope alive, a hope to strengthen the voice of the YPs, and it's for this reason that they continued to put together terms of reference in consultation with some of the older YPs who have made attempts to form a unified front before. The team that was put together for the volunteers who had been named, the team was put together from the volunteers who had been named the All Saints in the All Saints meeting. All the way we have managed to meet with the Psk NEC, we have made known our agenda, and we are pleased to report that the feedback from the NEC was that their struggle to get the one unified voice for the YPs had come to an end. Finally, they had one attire that they could call a representative of the YPs. This is how, ladies and gentlemen, we have achieved recognition as a special group within the Psk, and with a high likelihood of getting a seat at each of the committees within the Psk. This is an opportunity we do not take for granted, as it means that finally, the YPs get a voice on the inside. Fellow members, I am pleased to announce that each member you see in the YPG committee has in one way or the other fought for the YPs. With the immediate need for employment amongst us, I'm proud to state that we have managed to refer or recommend individuals for jobs at KHF, Pan Pharma, Checkups Medical, KNH, MOH, Integral Pharma, just to mention a few. And it is time we scale up these efforts. Do you not agree? And that is why we are bringing YPG to all of you. We hope to create a database of individuals needing employment, business partnerships, and mentorships. We hope to create a database of individuals needing employment, business partnerships, and mentorships. Medical Hub Supply, Humane Pharmaceuticals, Generics Africa, and Ponea are some of the partnerships which we are proudly consulting with young pharmacists to ensure that the value of the pharmacist is clearly outlined where their job-related targets and they're able to meet them. And so as I finish, allow me to quote one of my seniors here, a man whom I greatly respect, Dr. Anthony Cordillo. Shout outs to Dr. Anthony. I hope you're in the meeting. Let us not fight amongst ourselves and lose sight of the enemy. We are all fighting the same fight as colleagues. Let our positive energy be rallied behind one common end goal. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, allow me to welcome you to this ship. Welcome aboard this ship, YPG. Let us discuss, let us strategize, let us implement favorable policies for the future, each and every one of you here. Thank you so much for giving me the audience. God bless you, God bless PSK, and God bless the Young Pharmacists Group. Thank you so much. That was from Kelvin Odongo, Dr. Kelvin Odongo, a Rotarian and proud member of this noble profession. I agree with his sentiments deeply, and without diluting them further, let me hand over to our chair, Dr. David Odhiambo. Thank you.
Thank you, Faith. Thank you for the wonderful job. And welcome, everyone. You see, we have a meeting room of 53 participants as of now. And we're glad that we all made it to be part of this discussion, because at the end of the day, as Odongo was mentioned in the speech read by Faith, we are all fighting for the same cause. We are all pharmacists. We all contend with the same challenges, and we are looking at how best can we make the profession serve all of us, and how best can we make the profession not only to be about what we get out of it, but how do we build structures that would outlive our own existence and ensure that pharmacy remains a prestigious profession as it is, and make it even more viable for more people to come in. What if the next generation of pharmacists don't find the thrill and the enthusiasm they would from being members of the profession? I believe for all of us who are already part of the meeting, the 53 of us, we know why we're in pharmacy. We know we can make a difference by championing for this cause, and that would be critical for us as we move to the next phase in terms of what we envision as the initial steering team of YPG, and how we expect that to roll out, and how we expect all of us to plug in and support the agenda, so that beyond just looking at what is existing, the challenges that we all contend with, we have the same problems: employment, uncertainties around our job, profession, business opportunities. How do we get the support we need? There's so much that if we started listing those problems, we might not be able to. And just before we get to the presentation bit, there's so much that has happened, as some of them have been outlined by Odongo in that speech that has been read, in terms of the formative phases up to where we are now. There are so many interventions that have been tried for different faculties and different individuals within the group, but the question would be, how do we structure them such that it's not only a couple of people who are getting the available opportunities, but we make it be able to be comprehensive, to be catering for each and every young pharmacist who is within that common network. There are some referrals that were mentioned in that speech. Imagine those referrals have been there. There are some who benefited for them. It's good for young pharmacists, for all of us. But what of the people who might not be within those spaces, who would have someone who will refer them? By having a common umbrella network of the young pharmacist group now as it is, it would be able to ensure that we have this kind of opportunities. I remember last month there was a senior colleague who reached out seeking pharmacists to support in some of the work. I asked for CVs on the WhatsApp platform, and Bao has been doing almost the same as well. And people sent me, actually received 17 CVs. And at that, after referring all these people, I'm sure if at all that person needed one person, the other 16 CVs are of no use. And the question that I'm asking myself, where do I put the 16? What if another person seeks another set of people and I've already lost track because they're in my own inbox and probably I've already moved on with my own personal commitments? So how do we structure this so that we make these avenues available? And even when we're engaging with other employers, other platforms, we're engaging with them with the data on what kind of value do we need for the young pharmacists? How do we represent young pharmacists better? And those are some of the things that we looked at and saw that we need to come up with this particular framework and structure on how we are going to work together in making the profession serve all of us and give value to the profession as pharmacists. And as young pharmacists, we know what we are contending with. So with that said, I'll move to the next bit where I'll take us through what's the plan of what we initially started off with. So as you've seen, these are the people we started with. And I'm serving as the chairperson, the interim position, Secretary Odongo Kelvin, Esther as the project lead, Wanjoy Johnson, project lead, Felicity FIP Larson, and Nyawira Faith, the CPD coordinator. And these are, in terms of how we've envisioned working with the program, at this formative phase, being the initial steering team, we've worked on the TOR, some of the feedback that you shared from the survey we had that was concluded on 5th of October. What we envision is having this team run for a year. And over the period during that year and into the subsequent moments, we'll have engagement discussions so that we have elective official positions where after rolling out the initial phase of what SIP, YPG is supposed to be doing, how it's supposed to be done, and projects are ongoing, then the next team comes with structures in place and will run for a period of time that you, as members of Young Pharmacists Group, as young pharmacists, will recommend during that period that we serve an initial 1-year term, then we move to the next phase of work. So that would be the initial component of what we need to have in mind as we engage into the discussions. So then the next question would be, what is the scope of what Young Pharmacists Group? So Young Pharmacists Group, as a special group within the PSK, the key thing for us is to offer leadership and guidance in addressing the challenges we are facing as young pharmacists. Some of us, you might be having jobs, but the question is, are they stable jobs? What kind of guarantee do you have in that profession that you are? Are you getting satisfaction, or you are doing it for the pay? I know some of us are members of the KMPDO group that we have in UCOPAS. There's some questions that people are asking. Well, you have a DG position, deputy governor position, but you're getting a good pay, but there's not almost zero contribution. So what do we want to get out of this? And the key thing for us when we started the initial discussion was we offer leadership and guide professional growth of young pharmacists, both addressing our challenges and creating value for the profession. And being a group within PSK, we are keen on promoting professional development and ensuring that we promote professionalism, and while at the same time addressing challenges and ensuring the welfare of young pharmacists is taken care of. And on that account, then we realized that for us to do that, we need key pillars that will be guiding our operations. And those 4 pillars were advocacy and visibility, policy engagement, coalition building and partnership development, learning, networking, and mentorship. And on this account, we had a survey that was done, ended on 5th of October, and some of your responses are also captured. So before we get into the responses, I'll give a review of what we initially had in mind, and that is the implementation plan. What do we intend to do as the initial steering team of the Young Pharmacists Group? And what are the driving factors behind this? And on that account, on pillar number 1, on advocacy and visibility, we all know there are challenges in terms of the role of a pharmacist. All of us have had as pharmacists being referred to as shopkeepers, of qualified shopkeepers, and all the negative connotations that comes with being a pharmacist. But on the same account, we've all been engaged in different factions, different platforms, advocating for the critical role that pharmacists have in delivering quality care, promoting health system strengthening, and all the related avenues where we all practice it, from supply chain, from health system strengthening, pharmaceutical care, leadership and governance, whichever space that you are, there is a role that you can play. And on this account, some of the things that are happening, even when policies are being brought up, we have challenges with the policies that are being brought. For example, now we have KFDA. There's the current discussions on amendment of CAP 244 that might end up having pharmacy regulation of pharmacy practice being put under KMPDC. So what are the challenges that are coming? How do we bring the visibility and the advocate for the critical role of pharmacists to ensure that we are known as critical players and partners in the healthcare system? And so one thing actually that I would want to mention at this point, we celebrated Mashujaa Day yesterday. And before that celebration, there was a documentary on the contribution of NMS, Nairobi Metropolitan Services. And in that documentary, hospitals have been built and all. Oumo Luga, the former Secretary General KMPDU, talked about employment of healthcare workers. All the level 3 facilities that have been opened in the county, we have 5 medical officers, 10 clinical officers that he categorically mentioned, and other healthcare workers. But there was no mention of where do we have pharmacies in these places. So can we advocate strategically and get some of this done? But the question is, how then do we do it? So in that kind of a plan, our aspect would be, do we raising the profile of pharmacy and pharmacists as key players in the healthcare space? And the key bit would be, can we spotlight some of the contributions? We have people talking about MTM. Let's bring that to space. pharmacists have not been doing medical representative work and pharmaceutical marketing. We have some young pharmacists who are actually driving work in the pharmaceutical marketing space. We spotlight that contribution and make it not only to be selling medicines as pharmaceutical marketers, but as qualified healthcare detailers, medicines detailers who are giving the critical medical information, in addition to ensuring this is a sustainable business. You're not just giving information, but giving that information to generate revenues, and those revenues are ensuring the companies are working, and we continue making a living out of what we do. So spotlighting some of these contributions, making it be known that this is what we're doing, and whichever thing the pharmacists are doing, we'll put it as center of what we do, and use that in terms of negotiating for policies and negotiating for any challenges that we might be facing as pharmacists. Then the next bit was on policy engagement. There are government policies, bills, and legislation that keep coming, even the regulatory guidelines that are coming from the Pharmacy and Poisons Board, our mother umbrella organization from the Ministry of Health. But as this is happening, most of our interventions as pharmacists, this is from time immemorial. I remember from 2017 when I served as the KEPSA president, there were always issues that were coming up. And over that period, our active engagement, it's not only pharmacists, but the general healthcare space. As healthcare professionals, we've been reactive. We wait for a bill to be brought to parliament, then we will either oppose and bring our grievances to it. But the question is, to what extent do we get to that point? Because there, for example, let's talk about the previous health amendment bill. We knew about it, it was being debated in the second hearing in parliament. Almost likely we are never making any headways with such. So the key thing is, when these policies, laws are being passed because there are people who have their own interests and they are pushing for that interest and we are not part of the discussions, we are all losing. And at the same time, these are bills, policies that are going to affect not only our operations today, they're going to affect pharmacy practice, delivery of healthcare services, and service in the healthcare industry for the next couple of years. And if that's happening, it is us who are going to be affected more, because after this, we'll still be practicing in this industry. With or without the challenges, we are members of the industry. How do we make it better for all of us? By actively and proactively engaging. And on this account, some of the things that we're recommending is, any policies that are being considered in parliament, it's going to help us as young pharmacists to review them, give our recommendations, and be proactive about the process. This helps us drive that agenda. And there are certain policies, let's say, for example, currently the NHIF Health Amendment Bill that was passed in parliament. It's okay, it's already been passed. But moving forward, how do we what interest would we be having in NHIF as a bill by itself? Ask yourself, how many community pharmacies do we have across the country? I can give you a figure that is already actually verified it from PPB portal. We have 9,365 community pharmacies. Some are registered as pharmacies, chemists or retailers, or pharmaceutical retail outlets. So of the 9,300, let's assume we have only 2,000 of them that are owned by pharmacists. If we engage with the government at the policy formation phase and say NHIF bill being passed, let's consider community pharmacies that are representing pharmacies, that are being run by pharmacists as primary healthcare facilities, primary outlets of care. And therefore, these would be given accreditation under the government plan, NHIF. If they get NHIF capitation every month, you get 200 shillings, that would be added to the amount that you're getting. That is a revenue stream for you. And it also helps more people to want to be seeking care from pharmacies because they don't have to pay for all their medications. If somebody needs a Moxil, 100 shillings, and that is what is prescribed for them, they can get it from your pharmacy. It's a revenue stream for you, and it's supporting you to be an integral contribution in the community. But it's about us as young pharmacists identifying these challenges, coming up with formulations and policies and arguments that are going to not only look at what we want as pharmacists, but what is good for the ecosystem. The government wants more people covered under NHIF. The government wants more people being able to access healthcare services. And for us as pharmacists, we need our people to get business, and we need our people to be able to serve the communities where they operate. And that is a systems thinking approach that can help us. And beyond doing that for the business environment, the practice environment, as young pharmacists, most of us are not endowed in policy skills and all. And this is an avenue for us to build those skills, because in the next 5 to 10 years, it will be upon us as the senior professionals in the industry. Without these skills, how are we going to shape policies? How are we going to contribute to the shaping of the industry? And if we don't do it, we don't get the learnings, some other people will. And for us to position ourselves for the future of the practice and the future of the industry, we need to start it from now. And that becomes the next pillar on policy engagement. Then pillar number 3 was coalition building and partnership development. Over time, we all agree that for us to achieve positive outcomes in whichever space that we work, it's not only a single cadre, a single profession that's going to thrive. And that is the case, we need to look at how do we create an enabling environment by collaborating with all these stakeholders within that ecosystem to ensure we have allies. We need people who can support our agenda, and we need people who can bank on us, and we can also bank on them. And that is key. And even if we go beyond that, we can acknowledge that we are pharmacists, yes, at this particular level. But beyond being pharmacists, we exist in a society, we exist in families, we exist in communities. Not all my family members are pharmacists. So how can I collaborate with them to create an enabling ecosystem by understanding what are their needs, what are my needs, and how do we work in that ecosystem together to create value and to ensure the sustainable benefit for all of us. And on this pillar, the critical piece of what we are looking at is who are the critical strategic partners we need, allies and collaborators that can help us achieve our mission. And our mission are driven from the challenges we are facing, employment, policies are coming and resolutions are being proposed in parliament that are not favorable to us as pharmacists, and they're not favorable even to the patients that we intend to serve and supposed to be serving. So how do we create those partnerships? And in creating those partnerships, some of the ideas that we are looking at is engage with individuals within the ecosystem who can give us, let's say, for example, potential employers. We have MTAPs, USAID MTAPs program. They're running a number of projects on pharmaceutical system strengthening. If we can look at how to partner with them, and therefore when they're doing any extensive reviews in the market, literature review and related, even projects that they are executing on ground, we can have young pharmacists being engaged in those projects because of that standing partnership that we have as project associate and collecting data. That will be a win for us. Cambridge does a couple of projects. Can we partner with them at a strategic level where we know when there are opportunities, there are projects they want to execute, we can do that with them. When we want to argue for policy changes and policy processes, we have somebody who can back us, and even because they have an interest in policy in pharmaceutical system strengthening avenues, they are willing to be allies to us, and they're willing to even support some of our lobbying efforts. That would be a win for all of us and for a win for the industry. Then for us to ensure that we are all able to thrive, we need partners who can support us in pharmaceutical system strengthening. Look at it from now. There are some of us, actually, I saw there's a link that was shared about people who want to get into healthcare businesses, entrepreneurship and all. And there was a cost. I'm not going to talk about the cost, but the thing is, before you start a business, you need initial capital. There are different stakeholders within the industry who have an interest in supporting businesses, but the question is, how do we access them? Some of those I can mention, there's an interview, actually, not an interview, a webinar that I attended for Phyllis Pharmaceuticals, and I had a discussion with this guy by the name Peter Gikonyo from Equity Bank. They've been looking at financing healthcare businesses. And beyond on just equity, there's the Medical Credit Fund, an entity under PharmAccess Foundation. They were looking at how do we finance the pharmaceutical business chains of pharmacies and outlets, but they don't have an anchor. Imagine if as YP, we looked at having a collaborative engagement with them where, being young pharmacists within the Psk umbrella, we can negotiate with them to offer soft loans, and even if we can look at grant funding opportunities to introduce different projects within the pharmacy spaces. That funding is going to help our young pharmacists open up outlets. And if that is happening, these people have the financing they needed to start their business. They are meaningfully engaged doing what they need to be doing. And at the same time, they're opening up space for improvement and growth in the pharmaceutical industry, not only making the money, but creating a contribution to the industry, which would be key for all of us. And those are some of the things that we look at. How do we build coalitions and partnerships that not only help us in the now, but they're creating long-term value, creating an enabling ecosystem for all of us and for both of us to thrive. Then the last pillar, which was on learning, networking, and mentorship. Most of us, I can give an example of myself. I graduated in 21st June 2019, JCOT. After that, I started my job actually a week before graduation. And over that time, I've been moving from one job to the next one, and courtesy of being networking with people over my university years. And this is an avenue that we can take advantage of. By getting to engage with people, getting to see what opportunities exist, and building these networks, we're able to refer each other. Because even for the referrals that were mentioned initially, I refer somebody that I've worked with, I've known somewhere, and we've gotten to interact at what particular point in time. So how do we ensure that it's not only for a select few, but it's also democratized among the young pharmacists and opening spaces for young pharmacists to benefit and create value together for each other. And on this account, we're looking at the challenges being protracted job searches and employment periods. There are skill mismatches. For example, you graduated and all you were taught about was clinical pharmacy is the future of pharmacy practice. Then after school, you don't have a clinical pharmacy job and bills have to be paid. At the end of the day, whether we want to be so passionate about pharmacy, you have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to dress. And what it would be critical is what transferable skills do you have that are going to help you take up the available job as you move into different areas? And those are key as well at this particular moment. So what we're looking at is, can we have structured mentorship programs that would involve pairing senior pharmacists and even other ecosystem players within the industry who can offer mentorship to some of us? And by offering mentorship, we are able to gain the skills that we are going to apply in our practice. With some of the partners that I mentioned, we can have tutorship and fellowship opportunities. You work with them over a period of time, let's say even for a mentorship of 2 months, you'll be working under that person. In the process of doing that, you are learning and you're getting skills. And then that kind of tutorship and fellowship program, some of the things that I can mention. Last year, when we celebrated World Pharmacist Day on 25th of September, the theme was on pharmacists transforming global health. We know global health starts from the pandemic. We are talking about mental health challenges, sexual reproductive health, all that entails public health related interventions. There is an aspect of global health. But ask yourself, what are we doing as pharmacists in the global health space? And what investments are coming into such spaces? There's always been a move to improve access to sexual reproductive health services. Look at it from menstrual hygiene management. Look at it at the point of contraceptives, that is key. Look at it at sexuality, premature ejaculation, erectile dysfunction for men. Look at it from infertility in women and related. In all that spectrum of care in sexual reproductive health space, what interventions can we offer? How can we be engaged as pharmacists? Look at organizations working in that space. Imagine from coalition building and partnerships, we have such, and get some of our young colleagues to be partners and to be associates in these programs. It will be creating value for us in the industry, and it will also be raising the profile of pharmacists, not only to be limited to the counter, to be limited to the hospital setting, also the industries, but also opening up new avenues that are going to shape the future practice. And that is, even in mental health, there are some programs that I've been part of. And I remember last month, I had this article that I wrote for the FIP community pharmacy section that got an award. What role can pharmacists do in mental health? And in that point, it was envisioning we are in community pharmacies. Young pharmacists can practice in community pharmacy, even the senior pharmacists. And most of the mental health disorders, when they present, they would come with fatigue, general body malaise, and all that. Classical physical symptoms, but most people would not be signposting them. They would not identify. But you as a pharmacist, if you are equipped with the skills, you're able to identify the triggers, you're able to offer the initial psychosocial support and offer referrals. You're already playing a role in that space. And if we adopt such and tailor programs and have the anchor of Psk and senior pharmacists, we win grants. Those are helping our young pharmacists to continue doing that work. So these are all some of the ideas that we are thinking through and seeing how better can we serve our young pharmacists, and how better can we create avenues that enables all of us to create meaningful value and to support one another, rather than everybody working on their own path and hoping to make it through without coming together on a common platform. So those are the overall overviews, the pillars that we had. And I think that will now lead us to the next part, where I'll hand over to Esther, take us through the survey feedback. Then we go to the Q&A session. So Esther, welcome.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Davy. And thank you all for attending. Thank you so much for your feedback and for your interactions. So I will go into the survey feedback. For those of us who are not, you're not aware, a few weeks ago, we decided to share a survey, basically just wanting to find out, what you guys are, what are your challenges and what you'd like YPG to do for you. And so usually, when you're starting something, it's important to really just find out what people are, what is ailing us, what is it that we want YPG to do for us. And so this pretty much, I'm going to present what the survey was all about. And from your survey, or rather from your responses, this really helps us to really carve out what it is we want to, focus on in YPG. So the first feedback, we could just move to the next slide. Okay, so we had a total entries of about 59 people who filled in the survey. I see right now we are about 66, so I'm kind of hoping that most of the people who actually inputted or rather participated in the survey are actually here today. So we had a total entry of 59, and those who are PSK members were 31, which I think was really nice. So a majority were PSK members, and those who are not members were 28, which comprised of 48% of the total feedback that we received. So that was very interesting, because that also gives us an idea if young pharmacists are actually interested in joining PSK. And so I think going ahead, we can really just ask ourselves, what is it about PSK that that really makes us not want to join, or that makes us want to join. So that's basically the feedback we received on membership, on PSK membership. And then moving to the next slide, the next question that we asked on our survey was the priorities. So we asked you guys to really tell us, using the strategic pillars that we have already listed down, which ones were top priority for you guys. And so 34 of you, who are the majority, really wanted, or rather really thought that learning, networking, and mentorship were priorities for them for YPG. So I thought that was very interesting. And then 11 were on advocacy and visibility, 10 on policy engagement, and 4 on coalition building and partnerships. So for those who are really listening to Davy's presentation, you realize that these 4 are basically our strategic pillars. And of course, as you have seen in the chart, they're not really cast on stone, but we sat down and we came up with these strategic pillars, and we thought that they were interesting and they would be of interest to you. And so, very interesting, just to give you a feedback, that learning, networking, and mentorship is a top priority for young pharmacists, and it's something that we've really taken into consideration. And we hope that going forward, we can really tackle this and focus on this. And by the end of our mandate, then we'll be able to say that, yeah, at least we learned, at least we networked, and at least we mentored others even as we were mentored. So that was the second question we asked, and that was the response to that particular survey. So the next, we asked you guys to tell us what your challenges were, and the challenges faced by young pharmacists. And so I'll just go list them one by one. So number 1, unemployment and underemployment. And Davy has already talked about this, and this is nothing new. So I think very many of us are really facing unemployment. It's very rampant and it's very unfortunate. And then there's also the issue of underemployment. So yeah, you're employed, but then your wage, your remuneration is not commensurate with the effort that you put in, and even your level of education. So that's one of the challenges. And then there's the challenge of lack of mentorship opportunities. It seems that our older, or rather people, we lack those people to mentor us, to really show us the ropes, considering the dynamics of the market and how the market has really changed. And then there was financing for self-employment and business ventures. It really came to our attention that very many young pharmacists are really closing down their businesses. And so that was a very important challenge. There was the challenge of favorable medicine sourcing options, and especially for those guys who decided to go into self-employment, start pharmacies. And then there was a challenge of lack of exposure to emerging fields of pharmacy. Pharmacy is really rapidly changing, and especially when you interact with the Western world and the European world, you realize that there are vast opportunities to the pharmacy profession, and sometimes we just don't know, so we don't venture into those areas. And then the other challenge was that of low salaries, which really goes hand in hand with underemployment. And then there was the challenge of lack of policy administration and definition of a role of a pharmacist. So it looks like the pharmacy specialty is not very well defined, especially even by the law. So that also brings a lot of confusion, especially when you go to do your postgraduate and you realize there's some confusion, with your level of practice. And then there's the issue of market relevance, and this really ties hand in hand with those who are in school. So they come out, of course, yeah, they are learned, but then there's nowhere for you to apply those skills. And then balancing family and work. Of course, we're in that critical age where people are starting families, so that was also a major challenge, and also the choice of a master's program. So what do you study? So these challenges pretty much summed up the challenges of the young pharmacist, and something that we're really interested in engaging with you guys, engaging with ourselves, and engaging with the senior pharmacists to just see how we can help ourselves. And so the last and least is the support. So what then do we need, YPG to do for us? Or rather, what did you guys say you need YPG, to sort you out on? And so I'll just quickly run through them. There was the connection with mentors. And of course, this really makes sense because our major goal, or rather the major priority of the young pharmacist was that of learning, networking, and mentorship. So you guys want us to connect you guys to mentors. There was the partnership, potential employers to bridge the unemployment gap. And so I see that, and we hear you. And then that of regulation of practice, and of course from our side we can really just policy advocacy, just to regulate our practice, and to have better methods of defining our practice. And then advocacy for better payment terms, to just tackle the underemployment, unemployment, and low salaries problem. There's that of technical training, mentorship, and capacity building. That's just to tackle the market relevance issue, increasing the networking base. That's also another thing. So you guys would also like YPG to expose you to opportunities in the marketplace as far as data science is concerned. I really like this because this really speaks to the issue of emerging fields in pharmacy. So I thought that was very interesting. And then there's you guys would also like us to create a link between young pharmacists and senior pharmacists, because it seems that the link is not strong enough, and so that's unneeded. That's important. And then encouraging every pharmacist in their practice to create value. So that's also something that we can I think we can support you guys in. And there's that of creating a channel where right information is available and can be accessed easily. So that basically just sums up what the survey was all about. And this survey now pretty much informs our terms, our practice or our strategic pillars. And like I said, and I will say it again, they are not cast in stone, and they can be critiqued, they can be added on, and they can be always refined, just so that we can just start a movement where young pharmacists, just don't dwindle in the darkness, but we are part of a profession that works, or perhaps seems to work. So thank you so much for your time. I will hand it over back to Devi, but that's basically the survey that was done. And also just a big shout out to everyone who took their time to provide this feedback and just to help us chat our way forward. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Esther. So that is the general overview of what we've looked at in terms of the scope of what we defined, the feedback that you shared with us. And before we get to the Q&A, I just want to give a moment to enjoy. Wanjoy has been supporting actually in the initial formative phase on the mentorship program, and there's a scope of what he's worked on. Wanjoy, are you around?
Yes.
Okay. So just take us through.
Thank you so much. My name is Dr. Johnson Wanjohi. I'm part of the project's lead. The goal is to develop programs that will impact young pharmacists to prosper. And in mentorship, the goal is to tap the skills and knowledge of our experienced pharmacists and transfer these skills to young pharmacists. We think it is essential to have someone you can look up for direction with strong emphasis on the focus at the start of our careers as young pharmacists. I think I can give several examples in entrepreneurship where hardworking young pharmacists have tried to venture into, but sadly they have turned out unsuccessful. So this program will incorporate all specialties in pharmacies, and it will help mentor young pharmacists transition into their careers. So young pharmacists will give a link where they can fill a form in mentorship. And in this mentorship program, they'll give their details and the specific area where they want mentorship. The mentorship is intended to have an initial period of 3 months where there will be 18 sessions. I think David can share a snapshot of the mentorship program itself. There will be about 18 sessions where 6 will be focused on skills development. 3 of them will be mentor suggested. 9 of them will be mentee suggested, because we don't want the mentorship program to end up being another internship program. We want to hone the skills in a specific area of practice that we may want. I think David will share the mentorship program. It is a draft, and we will refine it as we roll out the program to those who are interested. There will also be assessment, periodic assessment of the mentees with the young pharmacist leadership group, where we can assess, are we achieving our goals in this mentorship program? Are we able to tap the knowledge from the experienced pharmacists? And then in the process, we'll be able to refine it and ensure that it meets our needs as young pharmacists. The other project that we intend to develop is the opportunities. I'm sure we really need employment as young pharmacists. Most of us are struggling, and we'll also have a repository where all those who are seeking jobs, seeking internship, networking in certain areas will have to fill a form, and then we will partner with Psk through the Psk liaison, who Psk was gracious enough to provide, and we're already partnering with the Psk liaison already. Yeah, as you can see on your screens, this is the initial draft of the program. The intention is to inspire and empower the young pharmacists. The initial part will be matching our mentees with our mentors. We hope that as we look forward to the Psk Symposium, we'll be able to convince most of these senior pharmacists to participate and partner with us and become mentors in each of these specific fields that we may want. The program will entail several phases. The first phase will be mentor matching. The second phase will be to determine the goals of the mentorship program. The third part will be initiation of the weekly sessions. These sessions will be specific to our professional development skills that we select in the form. After that, we will collect this and analyze this data. Then we'll have a final conference to ensure that we have achieved our goals in the mentorship program. This is only for the initial part. As we move on, as we as we roll out the program to young pharmacists, I think it will be refined and it will definitely meet our needs in the long run. Thank you. This was part of the plan. As you can see from session, I think the last 6 sessions are mentee initiated. And you will have a section to fill the specific areas that you need skills development and training in, and then we'll incorporate it in your specific program. It will be very, 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 very thorough.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you for that, Wanjohi. So generally, that marks the scope of what we had. And now from that particular point, we move to the next phase where it will be upon us to share our feedback, give our comments and discuss, because now this is what's going to shape the future of how we are going to work forward and how we're going to get to do the work that we've discussed and outlined for us. So we have 68 participants. Whoever wants to speak up, you're free to raise your hand. We'll help you unmute. Then we get to have a coordinated discussion. Anybody who has a comment, feedback, a suggestion? Yes, Tessie.
Mine's a comment. There's a lot of, there's a bright future for the whole group, the young pharmacists. And we look forward to you guys being able to implement and us collaborating with you guys. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Stacey. Peter Kangogo.
So hi everyone. I hope you can hear me. I'm on the road. I've actually stopped on the road to get into the meeting, and I hope I'll be audible. So I have just 2 quick comments. First is thank you to everybody participating in this initiative. There's always a start for everything. And secondly, I've seen, thank you, Andre, for the pictorial presentation for the mentorship bit. Something that I would want to recommend is don't miss out on a segment on policy advocacy and leadership in along the process, because as medics, that's a part where we've been missing out, and you find whatever regulates us, practice, even in terms of entrepreneurship, everything is policy and leadership. And that's what will make us visible is us not only concentrating on our practice bit, but having people with finesse skills in policy. So don't miss out on something to do with mentorship on policy advocacy and leadership in this part of mentorship. Then the last one would be a suggestion that probably when the COVID restrictions are delimited, maybe next year and we have the Psk conferences back to physical, you could have the first day of the symposium being purely for the young pharmacists, probably a mini symposium only for the young pharmacists before the main symposium begins. That's how we'll pick up all this borrowing best practices from what's happening outside our scope of practice here. So asante everyone.
Thank you so much, Peter. And thank you for the suggestions. And enjoy that is captured. Policy advocacy will be included into the mentorship, but at the same time, the policy and mentorship, policy advocacy and leadership component is also in the policy engagement from actually section in the pillars. So you guys, what we urge is, once we have these kind of policy suggestions, we'll coordinate and share some documents with you. Let's review, let's share our feedback, let's have it structured so that we are learning as we do the job. So that would be a good one for us. Alfaxad Kibagendi. You can unmute.
Okay, good evening, everyone.
Good evening
so the first thing I'll do is commend the team that has been working tirelessly after after the All Saints Cathedral meeting, for coming up with this, the preliminary structure. So I have seen a very good amount of engagement, and the members who have joined, I can confidently say I know some, if not many, and where they are ready to keep this fire burning so that we get this group going. But I'll also have to raise some not questions per se, but there are issues that we need to address. For example, the email for the webinar that was sent, there was a bit where it was said that all questions should be sent to an email that is not of the Young Pharmacist Group. Those are some of the things that we need to address so that we don't end up having the disconnect between what we want to achieve and what we are actually doing. And this is going to be an advice for the leaders who I can vouch for them, and they're really able. But we need to get more people in, because I've seen in many of these forums, the people who are engaging each other are people who practically know each other. So we end up leaving other people. So in as much as possible, we need to get all the other young pharmacists in so that we get the diversity of ideas, and we can get to grow the Young Pharmacist Group better and together. That's all I can say. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Alfaxed. And your comments are noted. In terms of the communications, if you all can see on the screen, there's a Gmail account that we started using as the main communication on YPG related issues. So please ensure you take note of that. In case you have anything you're going to share, please use that. For the opportunities, as I initially mentioned, most of the CVs were sent to my personal inbox. And that is changing because now for us to have a repository, and that is one thing that also was mentioned by Wanjohi, we need to have a repository from which we can say these are the people we're engaging with. When with the opportunities, we refer to that particular repository of young pharmacists who are engaging and helping us drive this agenda. And therefore that would be there, where even if it's a Google Drive folder, and we have all the CVs from that platform, we engage with people and opportunities arise. That is how we share those opportunities and see how we drive that agenda forward. So thank you for that. Then I see we have Samson Juma. You can unmute, Juma.
So good evening, everyone. And first thing, I would like to commend the team for our presentation. Well done. I think over the course of the week, there were a bit of concern on how the leadership structures was arrived at, how everything, but as it has been explained, it's an interim leadership that eventually an election will be held so that the leaders can be legitimized. Number two, the question of how the point of mentorship has really been floated quite a lot. In as much as our seniors are the ones who are supposed to mentor us, it's good that we appreciate that some of our seniors are the reason that we are actually in this mess. That is a fact that we cannot run away from. And so my question to the team is, how linked or delinked is YPG to Psk? Because then for those who are in the Young Pharmacists Group, the Pharmacists Group, you'd realize that there's a lot of discord. That young pharmacists, I don't know if it's all, that most young pharmacists have towards Psk leadership or Psk itself as an organization of what they have done to help. So how linked or delinked is this organization to the larger Psk group? Is it fully autonomous? Is it semi-autonomous? Or is it there to do the bidding of the senior leadership at Psk? Because these are really pertinent issues that must be addressed, because then if we are joining a really small organization that is a subset of Psk, how do we know that this organization is there to champion the needs and the things that young pharmacists feel we are really suffering from? So yeah, I think that's something that I would need you guys to address keenly and deeply.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Samson. It's good that you brought it up, because one of the things that we acknowledge is on mentorship, you've mentioned two key things. The aspect that there's a disconnect. And even from the feedback that we had, we all acknowledge there is a disconnect, and that is the pertinent issue as to why. How do we then bring that connection? Because Psk is our umbrella association, is the voice for pharmacists. But we are dissatisfied, and I believe actually even from the discussions we had in the group, I'm part of the Young Pharmacists Group discussions, most of us are not members, and even from the feedback, as I can go to slide number 11, we all acknowledge that not even the people who responded, and for somebody to respond, there is some interest, but they don't see the additional value of why would they want to be part of the Psk leadership, Psk as a team. So that is key that we need to acknowledge. And on mentorship, it's not about mentorship specifically from the senior pharmacists, but it's about what do you as a young pharmacist want to get out of this? And I would be very honest and very open with you at this particular point in time. When everybody's talking about, let's say, the priority area at this particular point in terms of learning, networking, and mentorship, we are looking at what do we get out of ourselves. And I mentioned it during the presentation. At the end of the day, we have needs, and we have to meet these needs. To meet those needs, we need jobs, we need opportunities. And that is why our critical, actually the priority focus would be, how do we get networking where that can land me a job, probably a mentorship that can guide me to where I can get my growth professionally and get my jobs and all that. So that is one thing that we have to acknowledge. So at this particular moment is YPG is a group within Psk. That is for a fact. And two, it's not about joining YPG as a separate entity. You're not going to subscribe to be you are a member of YPG by virtue of having graduated up to 5 years or being under 35 years of age. And with that, you'll pay your membership fee to Psk, not to YPG. On YPG, we are driving this agenda representing young pharmacists and ensuring as many people as possible are engaged and benefiting from the available opportunities, and where there are levels of dissatisfaction, we voice those and actively engage in ensuring these are being factored. That is very important. And that is how we are looking at it in terms of, we are part of Psk, but the challenge is there's that disconnect. Let's bridge that disconnect first. Get to understand what challenges young pharmacists are having, table them and engage with these people from a point of, this is actually the challenge we are having. Because even I was just having a chat with one of my young pharmacists, a colleague, and she's saying, you're telling someone I'm doing locum for 1,000 shillings a day, and they don't think it's true. And it's the reality. So for that person to mentor you, they need to come from a point of understanding and knowing what you're really contending with and what you deal with every single day. And that is the key thing, that as young pharmacists, as we are looking at how do we make the environment, the ecosystem better, we're also letting our senior pharmacists to know what we are dealing with and to be part of that journey with us and support us in that process. So that would be important for us. And it's upon us also to play our part and to actively engage. I hope I've answered you, Juma. But there's still room to get more suggestions, more ideas, and how we can do this better. Njenga, you can unmute.
Thank you, David and the team for the leadership. One, I acknowledge it's not an easy job to be a starter leader, in the sense that you're consolidating a team, charting an ambiguous path, and aiming at getting something out of it. We pray for strength and grace to you guys, and we'll support you. And yes, I love Juma's question in terms of how we have a general feeling of having been let down by our seniors. And sometimes it's very easy to think that the option lies in creating an autonomous outfit to advocate for the uniqueness of the problems. But one thing that's always true is that whenever you're in a state of absolute despair, something that seems to be happening to much of the healthcare workers. It's those that are able to step out and not have that picture of despair that are able to pull others. So even as we position ourselves with our seniors, we need to recognize whether we feel they are responsible or not. They still hold and yield some sense of power within the ecosystem, and we have a responsibility, in as much as they have one, of making them clearly see the gravity of the struggles that we are in. And probably even as we do that, there's something that Peter Kangogo mentioned, and I feel we need, to extrapolate on it, where he mentioned that within professional caucuses, it has been the norm that if you have either young pharmacists, at a global level, it's a practice, even with doctors, there tend to be a pre-conference session that addresses those unique groups. And I was just thinking off the cuff, even with the conference that's coming next week, I'm certain there will be 10, 15, 20, or, I have no idea who have registered of the young pharmacists attending. I hope we either have a session or a speaking opportunity or something that would give us prominence and begin to ignite a conversation through which we can then begin to build a pool of mentors and also share our experiences and stories. Then on the email address we are using, youngpharmacist@gmail.com, I presume PSK has a domain where they can host emails. I think one, for credibility and professional continuity, it's one of those low-hanging places that you guys can explore, such that we have our emails being managed corporately. And it's a lot easier even when we are dealing with employers, making cold calls, making proposals, for someone to trust an email that's domiciled in a corporate site as opposed to a Gmail. Otherwise, good job that you guys are doing. You can count on my support through this journey. Asante.
Thank you so much, Njenga. Great insights and great contributions. So just to give an update, on the Psk conference, we didn't have a session that will be coordinated by young pharmacists generally, but we have a 10-minute speaking slot. And on that 10-minute speaking slot, the focus is, as you've heard us highlight the pillars on what we are going to focus on. And then our ask is, what would be the key contribution from the senior pharmacists and Psk, the overall leadership at the higher level? And that would be the key ask, so that we build that momentum and get the senior pharmacists engaged. And that presentation will be made next week by our own Esther, who will be attending the conference in person. Then from that presentation, we follow up by getting the mentors and having those engagement forms. And from what had already been shared by Wanjohi, the forms are actually being finalized on. So even for the mentees, it will be rolling out in hopefully end up by next week. Then the mentors sign-up form will also be out during the conference, so that we have this pairing starting off as soon as possible when the discussion is still up in our minds, so that we have that moving forward. Then on the aspect on corporate emails, it's something that we considered, but then for us to get the corporate email, we were to engage with the IT person from Psk, whom we had a call also to host our sub-site that would be detailing some of the focus areas that we have as young pharmacists within the Psk website. So that is an ongoing discussion, but in the meantime, for us to ensure that we continue doing it and not sharing this information on our personal emails, we decided to have the young pharmacist email address for a start. But that is where we should be heading toward. That is it. Any other questions, any comments? Actually, we are 20 minutes past time. We hope to finish by 8. So another thing that what we are hoping on is, as we started during the All Saints Cathedral meeting where we had these discussions, we are hoping that by towards the end of this year, we can have another engagement, another physical forum, where we can all come together and see now, we explore the people we can engage with. Let's say, for example, when you're talking about coalition building, we have some engaged entities that we've already figured out are key partners that we can engage with, either in doing projects by ourselves, either as people who are working in the space who can be allies and partners, so that we have that kind of a formative phase where we consultative forum, we meet in person, start by networking, and also get this strategy rolling. So we are hoping you guys will be ready and psyched up to turn up for that particular forum when it comes to mature, and we get to engage so that we build on this moving forward together. So if there's nothing else, I'll give it back to you, Faith.
All right, thank you so much. I loved the conversation, loving the discussion. And it's still 61 strong. So thank you so much for listening in, and everyone else who has kept on. I think there being nothing else, is there questions, there are comments? I believe most of the chats have been answered. And I believe, yes, we are very ready for the networking. Networking is everything. Thank you so much, Anna and Dara. And not to take any more of your time, asanteni sana daktaris. God bless you all. And let's keep the conversation going. Feel free to drop your email, your number on the chat if you want us to keep talking. Is one way to start networking. Thank you so much, everyone. Have a good night.